So, hello friends, big greetings to everybody. Welcome. So we can start this session, evening session, with some meditation. We can sit together for about 30 minutes, and I'll give a little bit of guidance at the beginning, and then I'll be ringing the gong at the end, and after that I'll be offering some words of Dhamma. So let's begin our meditation time. So coming into the body, coming into this space, we've made this kind of determination to spend this time practicing together, and this is a great opportunity. You can always remember how fortunate it is that we have the time, we have the luxury of time for practice. We're not running around trying to make ends meet, trying to survive. And this is a blessing for us, that we can relax, we can rest back and let go of all the worldly cares and concerns for this time together. And so really sort of appreciating a sense of gratitude to be here, to be able to sit together, to practice together, to hear words of Dharma together. A kind of gladdening of the heart is a good way to start a meditation time, bringing up a sense of gratitude, thankfulness, and counting our blessings. And here we are. And we can really allow the body to relax, paying attention to the experience of this moment, the present experience, whatever it is. Very helpfully anchoring our attention in the body, noticing the breath perhaps. Noticing the posture. Feeling out how it is right now. Any areas of tension or holding. Any discomforts. Noticing hot and cold. Noticing the weight of the body. And we can just gently move, swaying from side to side or adjusting the arms or legs to really find our most comfortable position for this time. Paying attention, caring for the body, looking after the body. Coming home, coming back to this place, this time, the simplicity of this moment, giving attention to the mind that's observing, this awareness that we can observe. We're not immersed in this world. We can bear witness to this world. And so we can grow in understanding, grow in wisdom. So really cultivating this ability to pay attention, to direct the attention. Always keeping the attention in this present moment. Anchoring the attention in the body. Watching the breath. Feeling what's happening within and around us. Breathing deep, enjoying the breath. The easefulness of simply sitting. Becoming aware of the state of mind, how it is right now, without being that, observing that, noticing the mood, the arising and passing of emotions, of thoughts, of mind states, always from this perspective. The knower, the observing part of the mind. And just see what arises for you, what arises and what passes. Moment after moment, experience after experience, Dhamma after Dhamma. Staying present, staying body-based, aware of the body, aware of the breath. Here and now. We can sit together now for 20 minutes or so in silence. So welcome again, everybody, and thank you for joining us in the meditation. It's good to sit together, even though we might be far apart geographically. Nevertheless, it gives strength, it gives support to meditate together, I find. I hope you find the same. So I'd like to share some words today, but before I do that, I just want to pay respects to the Buddha Dhamma Sangha. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sangham namasami. So, I'd like to say a few words about foolish people and wise people, and the Buddha's guidance around the understanding of karma, the understanding of why things happen, why good things happen to bad people and bad things happen to good people, and how we can make sense of that, and how we can cope with observing and feeling the effects of injustice in the world, the unfairness of the way things are, the way things seem to be. Because for me, this is quite a sort of ever-relevant theme, and like probably many of you, I occasionally look at the news. A lot of people read the news every day, and it can be quite disturbing and upsetting. A lot of the news we hear, of course, is the not good news, is about the traumatic and difficult and painful things that are happening for other people. And it's quite natural to wonder why, how could this happen? And also to feel a sense of outrage, sometimes a sense of wanting to put things right and, sort of see things happening in different ways, wish to change the way things are happening, to get involved. And that can be very skillful. But first, we need to perhaps understand how things happen the way they do. And I want to talk about a sutta in Majjhima Nikaya, which is Sutta 129. It's called Balapanditasutta. Bala means foolish person or people, and Pandita means wise ones, wise people. And so this sutta is all about, what distinguishes the foolish from the wise, and what is it like actually to be in either category. And it's really, I find, helpful in terms of making sense of, or rather coping with, dealing with the feelings that can arise when we hear about terrible things happening to good people, and vice versa. And first of all, I should say that in a sense we can say there are no good people or terrible people, bad people or wonderful people. Actually, it's just cause and effect. There's just qualities that are skillful and unskillful. And it's really helpful to separate out the reality, to let go of the sense of personhood, individuals, and to see the world in terms of these qualities. This is a wiser way of looking and a more easeful way of viewing the world around us, and also the world within us, also ourselves as struggling human beings, working to try to purify our hearts, making mistakes sometimes, rather than blaming ourselves, for difficult mind states and sometimes unskillful behaviors, speech, action. We can see the qualities and recognize that we want to not give too much energy, not to give attention to developing unwholesome qualities, but to develop the wholesome and let go of the unwholesome. Grow goodness, let go of that which is unskillful, that's harmful, that's painful for us and for others. And so in this light, the Buddha's talking about the foolish and the wise, foolish qualities and wise qualities. And in this sutta, he doesn't really mince words. And I actually find this helpful. I find this supportive, that the Buddha speaks very plainly, very clearly, not afraid to speak directly to the way things are. And he describes the three experiences of a foolish person or foolish behaviors, and the three consequences, say, of wise behaviors, the three experiences of wise people, people who cultivate the good. And it sort of goes without saying that foolish people are people who do unwholesome deeds, harmful things, say harmful words. People who cause harm to themselves and to others. And a wise person, wise action, wise understanding is to do good, to do the wholesome, to abstain from the unwholesome. And for Buddhist practitioners, we're all aware there are these 5 precepts, and they pretty much cover all the bases in terms of wholesome and unwholesome behavior and speech. So a fool, the Buddha said, is one who kills, who steals, who commits sexual misconduct, who lies, speaks harshly, speaks harmfully, and someone who takes intoxicants and drugs that create the causes for carelessness. And a wise person is a person who abstains from these things, who's careful, to avoid harmful behavior, harmful speech. And in this sutta, the Buddha says, the foolish person has 3 experiences. The first experience is that when they're around other people, they feel uneasy, they feel uncomfortable, ill at ease. The second experience of a foolish person is that when they're relaxing, when they're on their own, during quiet times, inactive times, they feel agitated. They feel a sense of doom and gloom. They feel uneasy. And whatever their belief systems, they have a sense that they're heading for a future where there'll be suffering for them. They're frightened to think ahead. They have a sense that they're heading for a bad destination. So these 3 experiences are the experiences of someone who harms others or harms themselves in different ways. And I find it really powerful teaching to really consider this, considering how, the people around us are like mirrors for us, aren't they? And I notice myself, when I'm pleased with my own behavior, my own speech, when I feel I'm doing my best, to avoid any kind of harm. And I'm actually doing reasonably okay. I feel that the people around me are my friends. I feel at ease with the people around me. I feel like I can speak in public, and what I say is likely to be heard, and it's likely to be acceptable to the people around me. On the other hand, if I've done something that I'm not pleased about, that I feel remorseful around, that I wish I hadn't said, I hadn't done, I regret, then I notice something interesting happens, which is that I kind of project that feeling of unease onto the people around me. And I can feel uncomfortable around other people. I can feel as if they might be judging me. They may be seeing what an unskillful person I am. And I've actually experienced this a number of times. When I experience this, I can recognize now that it's usually because there's agitation in the mind because of some sense of wrongdoing. There's remorse. There's a feeling of being ill at ease. This isn't necessarily then a bad thing. It's just a sign. It's hiriotapa, it's a sense of shame and moral dread, a sense of having a need to put things right within, to first of all maybe forgive myself for having done something unskillful, but to make amends if I can, and to avoid doing this kind of unskillful speech or behavior in the future. So this sort of really speaks to me. It speaks to my own experience and the kind of crucial necessity for all of us to really be careful and work to refine our behavior and our speech. And for me, it's a work in progress. And I think for all of us, there's always scope. There's always room to look at this, look at how I'm manifesting in the world, look at how we're treating others, look at how we're treating ourselves, and see if we can bring in some more kindness, some more compassion, and see where we might be needing to kind of redirect our behaviors in more skillful ways. The Buddha went on to speak about the wise person and the three experiences of a wise person. And like I touched upon just now, a wise person is doing good, is doing their best to cultivate the good, to avoid harm. And when they're in the company of other people, they generally feel at ease. They can stand tall, they can feel they belong. They can feel that they have a right to be part of the group, that they can contribute, that they're an upstanding citizen. The second experience is that when they're relaxing, resting at night, going to bed, waking up in the morning, in their quiet times, when the mind will naturally start to reflect, they feel good. They feel okay. They feel relaxed. They have peace. And when they think ahead, whatever they believe about rebirth or the afterlife, what happens to them after death, or what happens to them in the next moment, or next week, or next year, their sense of the future is bright. It's not frightening. It's okay. They feel that they're heading in a good direction. So the opposite, of course, of the fool. And this is really hugely significant for us, isn't it? Because whatever we do, whatever karma we make, whatever that is, intentional speech or action, we perform, we manifest, then we have the results. We have the results here and now in a sense of well-being or a sense of not so well-being. And we have the results in all that we do, in all our quiet moments, in all our interactions with other people, and in our sense of the future, the same applies. So it's huge, really. It's huge. The peace of mind that we can experience when we keep precepts and we strive to do good, avoid harm. And the results of unskillful behavior for people who are not able, aware, in a position to know how to live skillfully. And one thing that I really take on board from this teaching is that when we witness the unskillful behaviors of people around us, or we hear about really cruel and harmful behaviors that are happening in the world around us, actually, if we see clearly, we can see that these qualities, these very painful happenings, have their results. And the need to seek justice is quite natural, perhaps, for us, but we don't really need to be concerned about that. Rather, recognize that unskillful behavior, cruelty, unkindness, harm and hurt, they immediately impact anyone who has these harmful intentions. And not only that, not only do they suffer immediately the consequences of their cruel or unskillful behavior, but also they cannot rest at ease. They can't relax without the mind throwing back at them the consequences of their cruel, unskillful deeds. And in the future, the trajectory for such people, very unhappy one. The Buddha said that it was impossible to give a simile to describe the sufferings of the lower realms when one has behaved in a very harmful way in a human lifetime. The trajectory is down, it's a downward spiral. And the Buddha was pressed to give a simile to describe the lower realms, what it's like to find oneself falling from the human realm into a lower realm. And he said it's like a person being beaten with 100 spears in the morning, again in the afternoon, and again in the evening. But actually, he said that's nothing compared to the sufferings in the hellish realms, in the lower realms. He said he picked up a stone in this sutta that I'm just talking about. The Buddha picked up a stone and he said to the people around him, which is greater, the stone in my hand or the entire planet Earth? And they said, well, of course, the planet Earth is so much greater than the little tiny pebble in your hand. And he said in the same way, this description of a person being beaten with 100 spears, morning, afternoon, and evening, is just like this small pebble in my hand compared to the sufferings of people in the hell realms, of beings who have acted cruelly, who have harmed and hurt others in this life. And it's pretty powerful to reflect upon this. It helps me to understand the urgency, the importance for us to not stoop, not get enmeshed or involved in harmful actions for any reason whatsoever. And we can't necessarily predict what experiences we're going to have in this lifetime, what may come our way. We can see looking around the world, that there are people who get caught up in very terrible situations of great harm, great hurt, violence, even death, through war, through famine, through, very painful chains, causes and conditions, cascading effects around them. And, it doesn't, none of this seems to make sense to us on a superficial level, but we can accept as practitioners ourselves that whatever comes our way, there'll be some past cause for that. It's not my fault if something terrible happens to me, but there will be some reason for that. The most important thing that I can do is not to make it worse through unskillful intention, not to reciprocate if somebody harms me, not to go down the same road, rather to make peace with the situation, to be willing to bear the suffering and let it stop here. Don't let it go any further. Don't react, don't retaliate. And for me, this sort of really kind of brings home the clarity around this necessity for us, that it's never in our interest. It's never in the interest of the wider field for us to add harm and hurt, unskillful behaviors, unskillful speech into the field. And it's a tall order sometimes, for sure. But understanding these laws of karma, the consequences of actions and speech that's skillful or unskillful, it really, for me, helps to step back from the complexity of samsara, the confusing nature of the world around us, and just come home to this experience here and this journey and the place of agency, the place where we have the power, the ability to turn things around, to make good. In this sutta, the Buddha also described the animal realm, saying that people who, with intention, speak or act in harmful ways, consistently through their life, inevitably will fall from the human state. And he described all the different ways in which beings live in the animal realm, and how very difficult, how very rare it is for a being in the animal realm to be able to come back as a human being. The simile of the turtle, the one-eyed turtle, which many of you will know. The chance of a one-eyed turtle swimming around the ocean, putting its head through a ring that's floating on the surface of the ocean, and it lifts its head, it comes out, pops its head out of the waves once every 100 years. The chance of that turtle hitting, getting its head in the inside of the ring that's floating on the ocean, that's the kind of odds for us to manage to scrabble back up from the animal realm to the human realm. Now again, it's powerful, urgent, sense of how crucial it is to make the most of this lifetime, to make the most of this opportunity, recognizing this is a rare and precious opportunity for us, to be have the ability as human beings to practice the Dhamma. The Buddha said, in the animal realm, that's just not possible. This is a place, a situation, the animal realm, of devouring, being devoured or devouring others. That is the obsession. That is the kind of what takes up all the life energy in the animal realm. And he said, you know, it's a place where the weak are slaughtered by the strong. One eats or one is eaten. When I put my mind there, when I really consider what that is like, how that would be, when I look around actually and see, you know, the birds, we have the birds in the garden here, we have squirrels here running around, and we have wild animals out in the bush not very far from here. And that is the case. That is the case for all of them. They are constantly having to get, you know, the necessities of life, the food they need to survive. It takes up all their time. And there's always the fear that they may become prey for another being. And even the ones that are big vegetarian beings, the bears and the elk, the deer, they can be prey, but also, even if they are not too endangered themselves, they have to keep finding food. They have to keep seeking. They're driven by hunger. And when they lose their strength, when they become older, when they get injured in any way, when they're not capable of getting what they need, then how terrible is that? There's no welfare system. There's no safety net. There's not much support from their community around them. Oh my goodness. How difficult, how painful, how frightening. So, you know, to really take in these teachings, and the Buddha gave many, many teachings about the consequences of our actions. And it's important, as I said at the beginning, to recognize that we don't really want to take personally the laws of karma, but we have agency. What I mean is, we don't have to blame and judge ourselves for bad things happening, difficult things happening to us. It's a waste of time. It's meaningless to do that. But what we can do is we can know how to relate to difficult situations, painful happenings. Instead of taking ourselves to be a victim and blaming perpetrators and seeking revenge, again, these things are not the best use of our time. And not only that, they're also quite traumatic for us. They are the causes of trauma when we don't fully integrate what's happening for us. We can't fully open to the suffering that's happening to us. We become traumatized, and the suffering goes on and on and on. But if we can open to the suffering as we receive it, as difficult things happen for us, then we can really process fully and begin the work of letting go. And you know, it's a pure and a directed and a focused way of practice, but it enables us to turn things around. Let harm stop, you know, not add to the suffering of this world, actually relieve the suffering of this world, heal the suffering of this world. So I could say so much more about this teaching and this sutta, but I think I'd actually like to stop here and make space for questions and comments, so we can have a little bit more interaction on this topic, because it's quite a a powerful and potent topic. So, Ayya. Now I'll just have a look and see if we have any questions. Thank you all for being here. Thank you, Hassan. Hassan asks, how can I practice upekkha, that is equanimity, in the face of physical pain? I notice I become fearful when I'm physically ill because I need to be physically healthy to work to support my parents. Thank you. And this really relates for me because it's frightening to be sick. And we're not in the dire situation of the beings in the animal realm where sickness will often mean being cast out, being easy prey, death. In the human realm, we have opportunities to get medicines, to get support. How wonderful is that? And yet, nevertheless, when the body is sick, we can feel great unease, great distress, and great concern regarding the future. And in this situation, thank you for sharing with us, Hassan. You know, there's a sense of the necessity to keep going, to keep working, to keep supporting the family. How to practice upekkha, equanimity, in the face of these vicissitudes, these difficulties. I would say, you know, any chance, any time and space to sit or lie down and be with the situation inside, to allow yourself to feel what you feel and allow what will quite naturally arise, which will be the fears, the concerns, the anxieties, but focus on the body, what's happening in the body, and let the thoughts come and go, but keep coming home to the body, and in this way allow the body to relax, allow the body to resource itself, to come to more peaceful, less stressed state. And when we do this practice of body awareness, watching the breath, relaxing, opening to the way things are physically, then the mind also can come to a place of more spacious ability to process the moods, the emotions, the thoughts. And you can watch them. You can watch them arising and passing. And, you know, peace and a sense of ease can begin to manifest when we have time for meditation, making time for that. Oftentimes, I feel, you know, when there's physical illness, it's almost like this is an opportunity actually to slow down, to withdraw. And what can you do, Hassan? If you're physically not well, you're going to have to pull back a little bit and rest. And, you know, it's an imperative often, isn't it, when we're sick? And so it's not like you have a choice. It's like this is what has to happen in order for the well-being to return. And so I would say, rather than trying to struggle on, allow yourself to rest and allow all the fears and concerns their space, their time. Listen to the mind, listen to the body. And my hope is that this will be a way to feel that you can resource yourself and be with the situation with as much kind of acceptance and as much good heart as possible. I really hope that's helpful. And actually, Hassan has another question for us. Thank you again. In America, we have a lot of mass shootings, but there was a recent one in school which hit me hard. I keep getting recurring thoughts of children getting killed in a classroom. As a Buddhist, what should I be doing? Yeah, it's really very painful to hear about the senseless killing of small children, and to, all of us can actually not fully comprehend, but we can have a sense of the terrible, terrible suffering of their parents and the people around them, and also the teachers murdered, and their partners, their children, their families. So terrible, so painful. And we all have the same human heart. We all have the same understanding of these things. And as a Buddhist, I feel, we can do the work of just taking in information that we receive from outside, this kind of news. Take it in, contemplate what you feel you've understood, what you feel you know of a situation where there's great suffering, and allow that to do its work. So natural response is to feel great compassion, great sorrow and sadness, and to open to these emotions, open to these mind states. And recognizing, as I've been saying, that the person who is the cause of this kind of suffering, the state of mind of that person, the karma for such a person, it really makes the heart quake to consider this. And when we see clearly, when we clearly consider the situation for all those involved, everyone involved in this terrible happening, we can feel compassion for every one of them. And in the Christian tradition, they have a very mindful practice around what they call intercession. So we hear things going on around us, we hear the news in the world, we hear of the bigger picture through the media. I would say always to have a sense of recognizing that this is not actually something to receive at face value, but just, here's some news. The work of intercession is to take it in, and work with the feelings that arise as a result. And when we do this, and we make peace here with the suffering that we are processing, that we're aware of, that we're feeling the impact of here, then this peacemaking is of benefit to all. And it's a very clear and wise seeing, because in truth, we are all connected. There's no individuality, actually. There is just karma, for good or for ill. And so we can, as Buddhists, recognize that we have a work to do. We have a duty to work with karma, work with whatever karma we experience ourselves, whatever we hear about in the world around us, whatever cause and effect comes into the chitta, comes into the mind, to be willing to work with that and let it come to a place of peace. Let harm end, as I said. And we all have a part to play, because when we hear about things happening in the world, we can have reactivity towards the news that we hear. Naturally have responses, but it's really important for us. And in the light of this sutta, let's remember not to add to the suffering. So feelings of vengefulness, feelings of anger, feelings of hatred, we need to contain such feelings if they arise, which they often do, to contain them, not to act or speak in anger, with hatred in the heart, but rather to recognize, well, this is my part. This is a piece that I can turn around. I can make good. I can allow the negative emotions to end right here. And so we each can play our part, have our piece of the situation. As much as we receive, that much we work with. And always to be very conscious that all we can really do is make sure that we don't create any unskillful thoughts, words, or deeds right here. And if unskillful thoughts arise, unskillful emotions, then we can work with them until they've found their way to peace, until we can let go of them, until they've moved through. It's a bit like we're a kind of, a waste disposal system. It can be very wise actually not to take in too much news, because this work can be overwhelming sometimes. So to know when to stop actually taking in painful news from around us. But I'm not advocating indifference or turning away from the world. It's just knowing what's good here, what's good for this one, how not to harm this one. But if we do take in difficult news, then, we really have this work to do. And just know for yourself how much you can process at any one time. But we're a bit like a waste disposal unit in that we can take in a lot of negativity, and as practitioners we can just watch it pass through. That's our work. That's our practice. Wisdom arises from this place. Compassion arises from this work. And then we can offer that into the field. Compassion, offer metta, offer loving kindness into the field. Offer our goodness, and remember how incredibly significant that is, and it's not for this one, it's not for us as individuals, but for the whole. And the journey that we're each of us undergoing, the work of liberating the heart, let everything that we learn in the world around us, let all the experiences that we learn about inform us, let them all come to aid us on the path to liberation. How do we do that? We're mindful, we're attentive, we're willing to let go. And, if we can purify our hearts and uproot the greed, the hatred, the anger, the covetousness, the confusion here, this really is the best we can do. It's the best we can offer. It's the most peaceful and kind work that can be done. So I hope that kind of meets your question, Hassan. Thank you very much for that, for bringing that in. Thank you, Sud. Sud says, given the tortoise analogy, then it's even more rare to be exposed to human life. Do you think if one keeps their sila and imperfectly walks the path, we will avoid downward spiral? Yeah, I'm really grateful you bring that in, Sid, because the sutta, the Balapanditasutta, is quite a strong teaching. And, one could say it's a little bit black and white in the presentation. Either the good or the foolish. But of course, most of us fall somewhere in between. And we may be doing our best, actually. I mean, I actually would say that everybody's doing their best, actually. But some people have more wisdom than others. Some people are more confused than others. Everyone wants to be happy. Everyone wants to be well. Everyone wants a bright future, don't they? It's just that for some people, for many people, it's just not very clear how to do their best, how to avoid harm. We really need guidance. We really need precepts. We really need a sense of right and wrong. And we have varied conditioning. And for some people, many people, it's not really clear. It's not really yet part of the understanding. There's not a lot of clarity around what's skillful and what's unskillful. And there can be a lot of desire and aversion that obscure and allow really harmful behaviors to happen. And one can even feel, well, this is for the best. This is the best in this situation. Thank goodness, we have this clarity from the teachings of the Buddha. And actually in most religions, if not all religions, there is clarity around what is wholesome and what is not. And that there is never a good reason to take life. It's never a good option. It's never harmless. It's not a good thing to steal, to commit sexual misconduct, to lie, to be harsh or cruel in our speech. It's never a good idea to take intoxicants or any kind of drugs that confuse the mind. So we have this clarity. That's very fortunate for anyone who has this kind of clarity. But this is something that people sometimes need to learn when they can. And we can recognize that we may have, even if we have the sila, we have the understanding around keeping the precepts as best we can, we may still have conditioning. We may still have defilements in the heart, in the mind. We may still have ignorance. In fact, we almost certainly do until we're fully liberated. And so we have to be very careful. And we may feel compelled sometimes to do unskillful things because something's triggered us and rage comes up for us. Anger, rage is so powerfully motivating, isn't it? It's like we can feel, I must say something to this person. It's essential that I do something in this situation. But when we're motivated by anger, by hatred, inevitably the tinge of that negativity is going to affect the way we manifest through our speech or our action at that time. And the result is likely to be harmful. So, it's frightening. Anger is frightening because it's very difficult to hold it in check. It's very difficult to restrain. But it's absolutely vital that we do that because we know the consequences of harmful speech or behavior. And that's just one example. So until we have uprooted, all the negativity, all the desire, all the greed, all the confusion in the heart, we are kind of in danger. We're kind of walking a bit of a, we need to kind of walk a fairly narrow path and just be very attentive, to the triggers, to the things that bring up reactivity in us. And this is the time, for us to really sharpen our mindfulness, to really develop our practice. And the good news is that, if we're doing our best, if we're working to develop spiritually, we're trying to live a good life, we're trying to avoid harm, our intention is good. And intentionality is the creator of karma, it's the creator of results, There is great power in intentionality, and we can be pretty comfortable, we can be very confident, shall I say, if we know that our intention is good. Whatever happens, whatever people think of us, whatever mistakes we make, if we keep developing right intention, the intention to avoid cruelty, to avoid harm, to let go of any kind of unwholesome mind states, emotions, any kind of reactivity, then we can feel, okay, we're doing our best and the results are likely to be good. And we're really moving either from a kind of darkness and difficulty into brightness, or we're moving from brightness into greater brightness. And we can really be glad about that, make much of that. Like I said at the beginning of the meditation, we can be very grateful that we have this opportunity to keep refining our virtue and to work to purify our hearts of all suffering. So, we may walk the path imperfectly, but let's intend to keep working on our understanding and to keep the intention toward harmlessness, toward the good, and toward purifying the heart. Just keep growing that. And we can do that. Just keep bringing to mind where are we heading? What matters to us? How can we be of benefit to ourselves and all beings? Thank you, Sid. I hope that's an okay answer for you. I have a question here from Bhavani. Thank you, Bhavani. How to love and respect parents who practice discrimination by more importance to one child, boy, and rejecting the other child, girl. Please excuse me if my question is improper. That's a really good question. Thank you, Bhavani. That's a difficult one. It's painful. So parents not treating their children as equally loved, equally important, equally valued. And in this case, giving more importance to boy and kind of neglecting the girl. It's painful. To be seen, and it really ties in. Yes, thank you. With everything really that we've been discussing, because it's unjust, it's potentially harmful, it's unfair, it doesn't reflect or relate to the qualities or the value of those children at all, but it's a kind of conditioning, possibly over many generations, and even a cultural phenomenon, that one gender, one body type is valued over another. All human beings, all of the same kind of intelligence and potential and so forth, but this valuing of one, devaluing of the other, to be seen, to be witnessed. And, you know, it's actually easier for the one who is devalued to perceive the fullness of that picture, because when we're the kind of second-class citizen in the family, then, you know, we can really see, we can, because we feel it, we're more awake to this discrimination, this unfairness, this situation. If we're the treasured and loved and valued one, the privileged one, it's a lot harder to perceive what's happening, because we tend to enjoy privilege. And this applies to, you know, in many other situations, of course, where we have often a kind of division, often into two, of the privileged and the underprivileged, the better and the worse, you know. And it can be along gender lines, it can be along lines of race, it can be in so many ways. We can find ourselves in one faction or the other. But to be privileged, to be in the fortunate position, is in some ways, one can be quite blinkered, one can be less able to fully perceive the way of it, the way things are. So there are certain advantages to being the devalued one. I don't know if that's of any comfort whatsoever if you happen to be the girl in this situation, but it is an interesting fact. It is an observation, I should say, that we can learn a great deal from inequity. And, you know, it doesn't have to be a problem, but we can open to how that feels. How does it feel when there's discrimination in the family, in the group, in the culture? How does that feel? What is the effect of that? Is that wholesome or unwholesome? What are the results? And always bringing it home and always coming back to allowing wisdom to grow through our observing, through our process of understanding the dukkha of this particular situation. So I hope that's helpful. And one thing that comes to my mind, just to conclude on that, is no blame. No blame. It's hard to come to the place of no blame. But honestly, people don't mistreat others knowingly for their own benefit, for their happiness and well-being. No, that's not the result for them. The result is suffering. And so anyone who discriminates in this kind of way, you know, there's suffering there for them also. Nobody wins. Nobody really benefits from injustice of any kind. So just remembering that, and one can even develop compassion for each and every person in this kind of scenario. And this is, you know, this is the wise approach to see the suffering in every human heart in such a situation. Yeah, I hope that is a suitable answer for you. Thank you, Bhavani. Okay, we've just got a minute to go, but I'll just read out Malini's question, and I'll see, Malini, if I can answer it just in brief for you. Thank you for your question. As a lay practitioner, I'm considering taking up the path as a postulant. However, my mother is not comfortable with letting me go, even though she's also Buddhist. Can you offer some advice? Yeah, I mean, it's not an unusual happening, and I think for a lot of parents, they're quite wise if they realize that if their child goes into the holy life, asks for ordination, becomes part of the Sangha, then there's a loss involved for them. There's a big letting go required for them. And it's difficult. It's very difficult for many parents to really bless a child who wants to go forth. So I would say you're not alone in that. And keep talking to your mother. Share your aspirations with her. Include her every step of the way. And see if you can bring her along with you. As she's a Buddhist, that may be possible. And it's certainly important to reassure parents one can keep in touch. It's not necessary to cut yourself off completely from your parents when you ordain. You can keep in touch. She can come to the temple. You can practice together. You can encourage her to be part of the community as a lay person, a lay supporter. So keep the connection and keep talking with her about your aspirations. And I hope that will, over time, help her to feel that she can be part of your noble aspiration and support you in your path. So that's a very brief answer. I hope it's helpful. And I'm sorry I have to stop here. Okay, it's time to finish. Thank you all so much for your wise attention, and thank you very much for these really excellent questions. Wish you well. Have a good week, everybody. Hey, wow.